They say no one ever disarmed a galactic prison with cookies. But that smell, warm, human, impossible, made an alien warden drop his whip. Stay with me. This is how warmth started a revolution. Write your city below, subscribe to fuel more stories like this. And now, let's begin. The transport pod touched down on Kaltor 7 with a metallic thud that echoed through Miguel Arantez's chest. Through the frosted viewport, he saw nothing but ice and shadow, the kind of cold that made bones remember they were just minerals pretending to be alive. 42 years old, ex-firefighter, amateur baker, convicted of instigating humanitarian mutiny. The charges still tasted like ash in his mouth. All he had done was distribute food in a quarantine zone, fed hungry people. The directorate called it organization. Miguel called it Tuesday. The line shuffled forward into processing. That's when he saw the boy. Maybe 16, maybe younger. Hard to tell under all that starvation. The kid's legs folded like wet paper, and he hit the ice before anyone moved to catch him. Guards barely glanced. Just another body, another piece. Miguel's grandmother used to bake cookies on the day someone died. Never before, never after. Just that day. She said sugar and fire were how you remembered people were more than meat. The smell of caramelized edges and burnt love. He could taste it now, phantom sweet on the back of his tongue. A voice cut through the cold like a blade through fog. Here, tears turn to vapor. Do not waste them. The speaker was Othran. Gray-blue skin, amber eyes that held no light, features almost human but carved from something harder. He carried a shock whip coiled at his belt and a reputation that walked 3 steps ahead of him. Voren Threx, Chief Warden, the man who made prisoners sing pain like lullabies. Voren looked at the collapsed boy, then at Miguel, then back to his tablet. Tunneling assignment, ice mining, Sector K-117, move. Miguel bent down, hooked the boy's arm over his shoulder, and dragged him toward the gate. No one stopped him. No one helped either. The dormitory was a long tube of bunks and recycled air. Cold seeped up through the floor like regret. Miguel laid the boy on a lower bunk, checked his pulse. Weak, but there. Someone handed him a protein bar without a word. Miguel broke it in half and left it by the kid's hand. That night, lying on metal that pulled heat from his spine, Miguel stared at the ceiling and thought about warmth. About his grandmother's kitchen. About the small acts of defiance that looked like kindness but were actually war. If he could not escape, he would warm. If they wanted to break him, they would have to do it with a belly full and a heart that remembered what it felt like to care. In the maintenance bay, 2 levels down, recycling calderas hummed through their thermal exchange cycles. Miguel had noticed during processing. The purifiers hit 180 degrees Celsius for exactly 7 minutes every rotation. 7 minutes. Long enough to bake small miracles. He closed his eyes and started planning his invisible rebellion. Stone by stone, scrap by scrap. One warm thing at a time. Outside, the ice moon turned in silence, and somewhere deep in the facility's monitoring station, Warden Voren Threx frowned at his screens, watching a new prisoner who had stopped walking like a man waiting to die. 3 nights. That's how long Miguel studied the maintenance systems before his body started to fail. Tunneling shifts were 12 hours of swinging picks into permafrost, while ice dust filled your lungs and turned your coughs pink. By the 3rd night, his hand shook so hard he could barely hold the stolen screwdriver. But he had his map, thermal exchange patterns, airflow schematics sketched on the back of a ration wrapper. The purifier unit, designated K-117, had a dead zone in its sensor grid, just big enough. In the maintenance bay, another human was rewiring a water reclamation pump. She did not look up when Miguel approached, but her voice was steady. "You are not an engineer." "No." Miguel knelt beside the K-117 unit, measuring clearances with his fingers. "I am a baker." That made her pause. She turned. Mid-30s, dark skin, eyes that calculated probabilities faster than most people breathed. Tess Okoye. Engineering crew. 3 years into a 5-year sentence for refusing to abandon a damaged station. A baker. She said it like she was testing the weight of a word in a language she had forgotten. What does a baker need with a thermal purifier? Same thing everyone needs: warmth. Tess watched him work for a full minute. Then, without a word, she handed him a socket wrench. The exhaust coupling is threaded backwards, Authorin standard. You will strip it if you turn it wrong. They worked in silence. Miguel built his ghost oven from scrap metal, porous stone from the tunnel walls, and desperation. Tess made sure the airflow sensors would not trigger, made sure the heat signature would dissipate before reaching the monitors. "Why?" she asked finally. "Because they want us cold." Miguel tested the stone chamber he had wedged into the exhaust system. "And I am very, very tired of giving them what they want." The first batch was an act of faith more than cooking. Algae paste for sweetness, synthetic lubricant for fat, protein powder mixed with alien root starch for something that might, if you squinted and prayed, resemble flour. He shaped them by hand into small discs and slid them into the makeshift oven's heart. Then he waited. At 0300 hours, the purifier cycled into high-temperature mode. The Stellacore, as maintenance had labeled it, hit 183 degrees. Miguel counted seconds like prayers. At minute 6, the smell started. It moved through the ducts like a ghost coming home. Through the corridors, into the cells, past the guard posts. A smell that did not belong in a place designed to strip away everything that made you human. Warm, sweet, impossible. In his bunk, a Kaver priest named Jal woke with tears streaming down his calcified cheeks. In the guard tower, Lisa Vell stopped mid-patrol and pressed her hand against her chest, feeling something crack open that she had sealed shut months ago. In the monitoring station, Warden stood up from his chair, amber eyes wide, nostrils flaring. "What is that smell?" Miguel pulled 8 tiny cookies from the exhaust chamber. They were ugly, misshapen, barely held together. They were perfect. He wrapped them in cloth and moved through the corridors like smoke, leaving one in each wing. On every cloth, a note written in careful letters. Tomorrow again. Back in his cell, Miguel lay down and listened to the prison breathe differently. Somewhere, someone was crying. Not from pain, from memory. In the monitoring station, Warden stared at his screens and tried to remember why his hands were shaking, why the smell of burnt sugar made him think of his mother, why he suddenly wanted to put down his whip and weep. He clenched his fists until they stopped trembling. Then he accessed the security logs and started hunting for ghosts. The distribution became a ritual before it became a rebellion. Miguel moved through Kaltor 7 like smoke through cracks. 1 cookie per wing, each one wrapped in cloth, each one carrying the same promise scrawled in shaky letters. Tomorrow again. Padre Operador Yal received his cookie on the 3rd night. The old cover pressed it to his forehead first, whispered something in a language older than starlight, then carefully broke it into crumbs. Each crumb went to a different prisoner, the sick ones, the broken ones, the ones who had stopped speaking their own names. "What are you doing?" Miguel asked. Jal's calcified features cracked into something like a smile. "Making care visible. Each cookie now carries a name, the name of someone who needs protection during the next shift. We remember them. We watch for them." His eyes, dark as old earth, fixed on Miguel. "You bake bodies into community. I make it holy." In the shadows between shifts, Rux Den watched all of this with calculating eyes. Rux was human, which made his collaboration worse somehow. He traded favors for extra rations, sold information for protein bars, survival through betrayal, efficient and cold. He knew exactly what a baker in the ducts was worth to the Warden, at least 2 weeks of premium rations, maybe a transfer to surface duty, but first he wanted to see what the fuss was about. Rux stole a cookie from the engineering wing drop point, took it back to his cell, unwrapped it slowly. The smell hit him first, then the taste, then the memory of his daughter's birthday, before the war, before the choices that put him here, before he became the kind of man who sold people for food. He sat on his bunk and wept silently into his hands, the cookie crumbling between his fingers. Lisa Vale found Miguel in the ductwork on the 7th night. She moved without sound, the way good guards learn to move. Found him crouched beside K-117, loading the chamber with his strange dough. For a moment she just watched. This man, who should have been broken by now, carefully shaping hope into 2-inch circles. "You are making the contraband." Miguel did not run, did not hide, just looked up at her with tired eyes. "I am making warmth. It is against regulations. Cooking is classified as organizational activity." "I know. I should report you." "I know that too." Lisa pulled the cookie from her pocket, the one she had taken from the guard tower distribution, when she thought no one was watching. She had been carrying it for 2 days, afraid to eat it, afraid to throw it away. "I had a sister," she said quietly. "She used to bake bread on Othrosvig. Before the directorate decided baking was seditious, before they took her." Her fingers tightened on the cookie. "I forgot that food could be gentle." She bit into it, closed her eyes, let the tears come. When she opened them again, Miguel was still watching her, waiting. "The inspection is scheduled for 4 days, Lisa said, her voice rough. "I will file the report late. You have 48 hours. Thank you. Do not thank me." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Tomorrow again?" Miguel smiled. "Tomorrow again." That night, Varun Threx dreamed. In the dream, he was 8 years old, and his mother was baking tortas in the thermal waste bay of the reactor station where they lived. The day of low flames, they called it. The one day a year when families were allowed to cook. His mother's hands, careful and sure, shaping heat into love. "Warmth is resistance, little star," she whispered. "When they take everything else, warmth remains." Voren woke in his quarters, chest heaving, hand reaching for the shock whip on his nightstand. His fingers touched the handle, hesitated, trembled. He pulled his hand back as if burned. Then he accessed the security feeds and began hunting in earnest, rage and shame burning in equal measure, because the man selling hope in the ductwork had reminded him of something he spent 20 years trying to forget, that once he too had been warm. Tess mapped the dead zones like an architect designing a cathedral. She spread the duct schematics across her bunk, marked sensor blind spots in careful notation, calculated air current dispersal patterns with the back of a ration wrapper and a chewed stylus. When Miguel arrived for the next shift, she handed him what looked like a complex maze. "These are the places they cannot see. These are where the smell will travel without tripping thermal sensors. These," she tapped 3 junction points, "are where I already disabled alarms during routine maintenance. Ghosts in the machine." Miguel studied the map, seeing his small operation suddenly expand into something larger, something that might actually matter. "Why are you helping me?" Tess looked at him with those calculating eyes. "Because I am an engineer, and you are building something beautiful from broken things. That is what we do." They were not alone anymore. Jal joined them in the maintenance bay, moving with surprising silence for someone with calcified joints. He carried a ledger, handwritten, every page filled with names. 217, he said. "That is how many prisoners I have blessed with cookie names. 217 people who now have someone watching for them." Your warmth became communion. Miguel felt the weight of it. Each name a responsibility. Each cookie a promise. What if I cannot keep up? What if they catch us? Then we will have tried to be human in a place designed to make us forget. Zhao placed one heavy hand on Miguel's shoulder. "That is enough." Lisa came on her off hours, still in uniform, still technically on the wrong side of the wall. She taught them guard rotation patterns, showed them which officers turned blind eyes and which ones hunted for sport, helped them time distributions to shift changes. "Why?" Miguel asked, Because he had to know. Because I remembered something. Lisa looked at the cooling cookies on the workshop table. My sister used to say that tyranny only works if both sides forget they are human. You are making that very difficult. Even Ruxton showed up, though he stayed in the shadows, arms crossed, face unreadable. He did not speak, did not help, just watched with eyes that held too many calculations and not enough certainty. Miguel handed him a cookie anyway. Rux stared at it like it might explode. I was going to sell you. I know. I could still sell you. I know that too. Miguel smiled, sad and small. But you did not, and you are here. So maybe tomorrow you will not want to again. Rux took the cookie and vanished back into the dark. The operation doubled in size, then tripled. Cookies appeared in wings Miguel never visited. Prisoners he had never met began leaving ingredients at drop points. Salvaged sweetener, protein powder diverted from guard storage, even real flour smuggled from a supply shipment. The invisible bakery became a network. A web of care spun through the prison's guts. For 6 days, it worked. On the 7th day, Warden stood in the central yard delivering the monthly intimidation speech. Standard procedure. Remind them they are nothing. Remind them resistance is futile. Watch them break. But something was wrong. The prisoners were not broken. They were looking at each other, making eye contact. Small nods, shared glances. The kind of silent communication that preceded mutinies. Then the smell arrived. Tess had rerouted the exhaust directly into the yard ventilation. Fresh cookies, timed perfectly to Varun's speech about the inevitability of obedience. The entire yard inhaled. Eyes closed. Tears came. Guards shifted uncomfortably. The auditors in the observation deck frowned at their instruments, detecting nothing. Varun's speech died in his throat. He stood there, surrounded by the ghost of warmth, and watched his prisoners smile. In that moment, he knew. Someone was waging war with kindness. Someone was winning. He spotted Lisa in the guard line, saw the tiniest curve at the corner of her mouth, saw her try to hide it, fail. That night, Varun sat alone in his office and found himself holding an old data crystal, his mother's recipe files, preserved from decades ago. He had not opened them since her death, had not wanted to remember. He opened them now, Torta de las Llamas Bajas, her handwriting, her love, crystallized in measurements and instructions. Varun closed the file, accessed his command terminal, and typed 3 words: surprise audit, tracking drones, immediate deployment. Then he sat in the dark and wondered why his hand still trembled. Somewhere in the maintenance bay, Lisa's warning message flashed on Miguel's stolen terminal. They know. You have to stop. Miguel read it twice, looked at the faces around him. Tess, Jal, even Rux lurking in his corner, all of them waiting for his decision. He thought about his grandmother, about warmth as resistance, about the 217 names in Jal's ledger. Tomorrow again. He started mixing dough for double portions. The audit came like frost, silent, inevitable, covering everything. 3 days of preparation. Miguel baked in shifts, barely sleeping, fingers raw from kneading. Tess rerouted half the facility's air circulation to create a cascade of untraceable warmth. Jal organized distribution teams, each prisoner memorized, each route planned. When the tracking drones arrived, they found nothing. Empty corridors, clean sensors, no thermal anomalies above baseline. The ghosts had learned to be ghosts. On the morning of day 4, the auditors cleared the facility. No contraband detected. No organized activity. False alarm. Miguel sat in the maintenance bay and laughed until he cried. "We did it," Tess said, allowing herself the smallest smile. "The system could not see us." "Because the system is stupid," Jal added, his calcified face splitting into something joyful. "And we are holy." Even Rux crept from the shadows, something like relief softening his features. "Does this mean we are safe?" Miguel wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it. But he had spent too long fighting fires to trust silence. We are never safe. We are just not caught? Yet. But for one beautiful moment, they celebrated. Passed cookies around the workshop. Tess told engineering jokes that only she understood. Jal hummed an old hymn. Ruck sat on a toolbox and did not calculate the value of anyone's betrayal. They were warm. They were together. They were winning. The mistake was visible only in retrospect. During the celebration, during that moment of letting go, Lisa had smiled. Just for a second. Just enough. Vorun saw. He stood in the observation deck, watching the guard rotation through the security feeds, and there she was, Lisa Vale, his most efficient officer, his most loyal warden, smiling at nothing during an active security sweep. His finger hovered over the intercom, then moved to the drone deployment. Tracking mode. Maximum sensitivity. Target. All thermal and chemical anomalies, facility-wide. Protocol override. Section 42. Section 42. Meal ritual rites. The one protocol that allowed sensor sweeps through sacred food preparation. Rarely used. Brutally effective. The drones launched at midnight. Miguel was loading the next day's batch when Tess's terminal screamed an alert. Drones. Not regular ones. Hunting configurations. How long? They will find K1A17 in 90 minutes, maybe less. The workshop fell silent. 217 names in the ledger. Dozens of people who had learned to hope again. All of it about to end. Ruck stood up. Run. Destroy everything. Deny it all. And tomorrow? Miguel asked quietly. What do we tell the ones who are waiting? We tell them we are alive. We tell them we gave up. Miguel looked at the half-formed dough on the table, at Tess's maps, at Jal's ledger of names. That is the same as dying. Just slower. Lisa's message arrived 60 seconds later. I am so sorry. He knows. I will do what I can. Miguel made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff and hoping the fall would teach him to fly. I am turning myself in. No, Tess said immediately. Wait, from Jal. Finally showing sense? From Rux? Miguel shook his head. If I surrender, I control the story. I demand last meal rights, traditional protocol. They have to allow it. Othran law. They will kill you. Lisa's next message read. They will humiliate me first, Miguel typed back. That is enough time. He walked to the security station at 0200 hours and placed his hands on the scanner. My name is Miguel Arantes. I am the baker. I demand the right to prepare my final meal according to human custom. Vorin appeared in the doorway, shock whip in hand, face carved from stone in rage. You, yes me. You destabilized my facility with contraband pastries. I destabilized your facility with warmth. There is a difference. Varun stepped closer. Miguel could smell the electricity arcing off the whip, ozone and threat. Give me one reason I should not end you right here. Because I am requesting Section 42 rights, and you are still Othran, which means you still remember what law means. Something flickered in those amber eyes. Rage, shame, old memory burning like coals. Fine. Vorin's voice was cold enough to crack stone. You will have your ritual, in the central yard, tomorrow at noon, in front of everyone. Let them watch what happens to men who bake rebellion. He turned to leave, then paused. It will not save you. I know, Miguel said, but it might remind you. Of what? Miguel met his eyes. That you used to be human too. Vorun's hand tightened on the whip. For a moment, Miguel thought he might use it. Then the warden turned and left, and Miguel was alone with his choice and the knowledge that tomorrow he would either change everything or die trying. In the maintenance bay, Ruxden stood up, brushed crumbs from his hands, and spoke to the empty air. If he is cooking tomorrow, I will carry his stones. No one was there to hear him, but he said it anyway. A promise to himself, the first one in years. The drones found K-117 at dawn. Warden watched the footage alone in his office. The makeshift oven, the stone chamber, the careful modifications to the exhaust system, evidence of intelligence, evidence of care, evidence of someone who refused to surrender their humanity even when every system was designed to strip it away. He should have felt vindicated. Instead, he felt sick. The memory came without permission, the way all true memories do. Othros 6. 40 years ago, back when the Directorate was still pretending to care about colony welfare, back when they let families live on industrial stations, back before the purges. Warden was 8. His mother worked recycling systems, same as everyone. But once a year, on the day of low flames, the Directorate allowed families to use residual reactor heat for cooking. One day, one meal, one memory to carry through the other 364 days of processed rations and cold efficiency. His mother made tortoise, salvaged flour, algae sweetener, synthetic fat that tasted like remembering. She shaped them with hands calloused from work, singing an old song about stars that forgot they used to be dust. Warmth is resistance, little star. She had knelt to his height, eyes bright, hands dusty with flour. When they take everything else, warmth remains. Remember that. He did remember. Right up until the day the Directorate decided even one day of warmth was too much organization, too much community, too much human. They took his mother for sedition, for baking. Warden had buried the memory under decades of loyalty, convinced himself that the Directorate was right, that warmth was weakness, that care was chaos, that the only way to survive was to become the knife before someone else could. He built his career on that knife, sharpened it on the backs of prisoners who reminded him too much of who he used to be. And now a baker in the maintenance bay had pulled everything back to the surface with the smell of burnt sugar and stubborn love. Warden stood, walked to his shelf, pulled out the data crystal he had looked at days ago. His mother's recipes, her voice, preserved in instructions, measurements of care. He played the audio file. For Warden, when you are older, torta de las llamas bajas, you will need heat, time, and faith. The heat you can steal, the time you must make, the faith you carry inside. Remember, my star, they can take the fire. They cannot take what the fire taught you. Be warm, be human, be impossible. Warden closed his eyes, opened them, made his decision. He would give the baker his ritual, give him his moment. Then he would finish this, put down the rebellion, silence the warmth, prove to himself once and for all that his mother had been wrong. That warmth was not resistance, that care was not survival, that he had chosen correctly when he chose the whip. In the holding cell, Miguel sat on a bench that pulled heat from his bones and tried not to think about what noon would bring. His hands shook, not from cold, from the weight of 217 names. A stone scraped outside the door. Ruxden stood there, looking uncomfortable, holding a small pile of smooth rocks from the tunnel wall. You said you needed stones for the fire. Miguel stared. You came. I said I would carry them. Rux set them on the floor carefully. I do not break promises. Not anymore. They will punish you for helping me. Good. I deserve punishment. Rux looked at his hands. My daughter would have been 17. I sent her letters from here. She never wrote back. I think she is right not to. I think she knows what I became. He looked up, eyes wet. But I want her to know I remembered, that before I die, I tried to be someone she could forgive. Footsteps echoed. Rux melted into the shadows, but the stones remained. At 1100 hours, Lisa entered without knocking. I should not be here. I know. They will court-martial me for this. I know that too. She stepped closer, pressed something into his hand, a guard's meal token. Proper ingredient authorization. Enough resources to make something real. If you are cooking tomorrow, I eat first. In front of him. I want him to see. Lisa, I had forgotten. Her voice cracked. I had forgotten that gentleness was possible. That care was real. You reminded me. You reminded all of us. She straightened. Tomorrow at noon, I will stand with you, whatever happens next. She left before he could respond. Alone again, Miguel looked at the stones, the token, the messages on his stolen terminal, Zhao's prayers, Tess's technical adjustments, Lisa's coordinates. He thought about his grandmother, about the day of low flames, about humans who kept baking even when baking was illegal because warmth was the only law that mattered. Tomorrow at noon, in front of everyone, he would bake, not to save himself, to remind them who they were, that the smell of cookies was stronger than fear, that care could be contagious, that humanity was not something you could regulate away. Miguel closed his eyes and whispered to his grandmother's ghost, "This one is for you. Make it count." Somewhere in the warden's quarters, Voron Threx sat in the dark, holding his mother's data crystal, waiting for dawn. Both men, preparing for the same moment, both carrying the same memory of warmth, both about to discover which one of them had been right. The night before stretched like dying. Miguel lay on the cell bench and stared at metal ceiling, thinking about all the ways tomorrow could end. Most of them involved pain. Some involved death. None of them involved going back. Around 300, something slid under the door. Paper, real paper, rare as hope. Miguel unfolded it with shaking hands. Zhao's handwriting, careful and angular. 217 names prayed, not for the food, for you existing. You taught us that warmth is grammar, that care is conjugation. You made us remember the language of being human. Tomorrow, no matter what happens, we remain fluent. Thank you. Zhao. Below the message, all 217 names written in tiny script. Each one a person who had learned to hope again, each one waiting to see what tomorrow would prove. Miguel pressed the paper to his chest and let himself cry. Quiet. Controlled. The kind of crying that comes from knowing you matter. At 0400, his terminal blinked. Tess. Cannot sleep. Been thinking. Your ritual tomorrow is public, yes. Central Yard? Drones recording for security? Voron wants it filmed to make an example. Yes. Then we make it broadcast. Not just security feeds, whole facility, every screen, every speaker. I have access to emergency systems. If you are going to bake your rebellion, let everyone see it. Let it mean something. They will trace it back to you. Good. I am tired of hiding. A pause. Then, you gave me warmth when I had forgotten fire existed. Let me give you reach. Let your cookies travel farther than air. Thank you. No. Thank you. For reminding me what engineering is supposed to serve. Not systems, people. The connection closed. At 0500, Lisa's voice came through the intercom. Quiet, barely a whisper. Still awake? Yes. Good. Listen, tomorrow when you cook, I eat first. Voron will try to stop you. I will make him prove his honor. Author-in-law, if a guard volunteers to test the condemned's final meal, the commander must allow it. He will have to watch me choose you, in front of everyone. Lisa, your career. My career is torturing people who bake cookies. I think I can find better work. A sound like a smile. My sister would have liked you. She would have said you have the hands of someone who knows what matters. I am scared. Me too. But I think that is when we are most human. When we do the right thing, even though we are scared. See you at noon. Silence again. Miguel sat up, looked at Zhao's note, Tess's promise, Lisa's courage. Looked at Rux's stones piled in the corner. All these people, risking everything, because he had decided warmth was worth fighting for. His grandmother used to say that baking was prayer for people who did not know how to kneel. You took broken things, flour and eggs and hope, and made something that fed more than bodies. You made communion. You made proof that care was real. Tomorrow he would pray, loud enough for everyone to hear. He lay back down and, finally, slept. In his quarters, Warden did not sleep. He sat at his desk, shock whip laid across the surface, Mother's data crystal beside it. All night he rotated between the two. Pick up the whip, remember discipline, put it down. Pick up the crystal, remember warmth, put it down. Back and forth, weapon and memory, law and love. At 0600, he made his choice. He picked up the whip, stood, walked to the mirror, looked at the man staring back. Gray-blue skin, amber eyes, features carved by decisions made in darkness. This was who he was. Warden, keeper, the knife. But the reflection's hand trembled. Warden gripped the whip tighter, trying to stop the shaking. It did not stop. His body remembered something his mind kept trying to forget. Tortoise on the day of low flames. His mother's hands, the smell of warmth in a cold station. The feeling of being loved. The whip fell from his fingers, clattered on the floor. Warden stood there, breathing hard, staring at his empty hands. At noon he would end this, prove his loyalty, demonstrate that warmth was weakness and care was chaos. At noon he would watch a man bake, and something in Varun's chest that had been frozen for 40 years cracked just enough to let in light. He picked up the whip, holstered it, picked up the data crystal, put it in his pocket, then walked to the door, shoulders straight, jaw set, ready to perform the duty he had trained his whole life to execute. But the crystal stayed with him, just in case his mother had been right all along. Dawn broke cold and pale over Culture 7. In the central yard, guards assembled equipment. In the cells, prisoners whispered prayers. In the maintenance bay, Tess armed the broadcast system. And in holding cell 23, Miguel Arantes stood up, cracked his knuckles, and began to knead imaginary dough. Muscle memory, meditation, preparation. Today, he would teach a prison to remember warmth. Today, he would turn a final meal into a first lesson. Today, a baker would wage war with cookies. And somewhere in the cold heart of Culture 7, something stirred, something that had been sleeping too long, something that smelled like hope and tasted like change. Humanity, waking up. Noon came like judgment. The central yard filled with bodies, prisoners arranged in viewing blocks, guards positioned in tactical formations, drones hovering like mechanical vultures, camera feeds active. Emergency broadcast system ready, hidden in Tess's careful code. They brought Miguel out in restraints. He walked steady, head up, eyes forward. Rux followed 3 steps behind, carrying the stones. No one had ordered him to. No one stopped him either. In the center of the yard stood a table. On the table, the purifier unit, K-117, removed from the maintenance bay, its stellar core exposed. Beside it, basic ingredients. Not the improvised scraps Miguel had been using. Real flour, real sweetener, real fat. Enough to bake something proper. Warden stood at attention, shock whip on his belt, face carved from granite. Miguel Arantes, convicted of seditious baking, destabilizing facility operations through unauthorized warmth. His voice carried across the yard. You have requested Section 42 rights. I grant them. One final meal, prepared by your own hands, consumed under observation. Then, sentence will be carried out. He paused. Let the words settle. Let the prisoners understand this was an ending. Begin. Miguel stepped to the table. Rux set down the stones, arranged them carefully in the purifier's chamber. Their eyes met for a second. Rux nodded. Miguel nodded back. The restraints came off. Miguel flexed his fingers, looked at the ingredients, then at the crowd, then at Varun. Thank you for honoring tradition. Do not thank me. Cook. Miguel began. First, the fire. He activated the purifier's test mode. The stellar core heated. 180 degrees. 185. 190. The stones absorbed warmth, held it, became an oven that should not exist. Then the dough. Flour and fat and sweetener mixed with water pulled from the recycling line. His hands worked with practiced certainty, kneading, folding, shaping love into physics. Around the yard, prisoners watched in silence. Some wept, some smiled, some did both. Jal began to hum, low and deep, an old hymn without words, just sound carrying memory. Other prisoners joined, not loud, not organized, just human noise, filling the spaces between heartbeats. Guards shifted, looked at each other, unsure. Miguel portioned the dough into small circles, each one perfect, each one impossible. He loaded them into the stone chamber and closed it. Then he waited. 7 minutes, 7 eternities. The smell started at minute 3. It moved through the yard like a ghost coming home, through the guard ranks, through the prisoner blocks, through the observation tower, warm, sweet, utterly illegal. Voron's nostrils flared. His hand went to the whip. Stopped, trembled. At minute 6, Miguel opened the chamber. 24 cookies, golden, imperfect, beautiful. He arranged them on a cloth. Then he did something no one expected. He did not eat. He picked up the first cookie, walked to the nearest guard, an older Othran with scars and tired eyes. "Eat this. If you still want to beat me after, beat me with a sweet mouth." The guard stared, looked at Voron, back to Miguel, took the cookie, bit it, closed his eyes, whispered something that might have been his daughter's name. Miguel moved to the next guard, then the next. Each one received a cookie. Each one ate. Each one broke a little, until only one cookie remained. Miguel walked to Voron. The yard held its breath. "Warden, this one is for you." Voron stared at the cookie, at Miguel, at the cookie again. His hand tightened on the whip. Lysa stepped forward. "Othran law allows a guard to test the condemned's meal. I volunteer." "Officer Vale, stand down." "No, sir." She met his eyes. "I invoke testing rights. You must allow it." Voron's jaw clenched. But law was law, even now, even here. Lysa took the cookie from Miguel's hand, held Voron's gaze, bit it, smiled. "It is safe, sir. It is good. It is human." Every camera in the facility was recording. Every screen was watching. Tessa's broadcast reaching every corner of Kaltor 7. Voron looked at Lysa, at Miguel, at the cookie still in Miguel's hand, offered like communion. Somewhere deep in his chest, something that had been frozen for 40 years shattered. He took the cookie, brought it to his lips, bit, and the world stopped. Sugar, warmth, memory, his mother's hands, the day of low flames, tortas cooling on recycled metal, her voice, "Warmth is resistance, little star." The cookie dropped from Voron's hand. The whip followed. It hit the ground between them with a sound like thunder. Voron stood there shaking, broken, tears streaming down gray-blue skin. "It was this," he whispered. "This is what they took. This is what I forgot." Behind them, Rux Den stepped forward, knelt, not in submission, in apology. "I betrayed my people for food. I forgot that food was supposed to mean something. I forgot we were human." He looked at the other prisoners. "I am sorry. I remember now." One by one, the prisoners knelt. Not to Miguel, not to Voron, to each other, acknowledging, forgiving, remembering. Yal's humming became words, a chant, a litany. He held up his cookie like a sacrament and began calling names. Chen Sato needs protection in Sector 9. A prisoner held up their cookie. "I will watch." Mirathos, sick bay, recovering. Another cookie raised. "I will remember her." Oren Kell lost his faith. A third cookie. "I will pray for him." 217 names, 217 promises, 217 people choosing to care. Guards wept behind their helmets. Drones recorded everything. The broadcast carried to every screen in the facility, and in the Directorate headquarters, 3 systems away, someone watching the live feed reached for their emergency shutdown. Tess had already locked them out. The transmission played, Kaltor 7's Revolution, broadcast in real time. A baker, a warden, a cookie, and humanity remembering itself. Vorin stood in the center of the yard, whip on the ground, cookie crumbs on his lips, and felt 40 years of armor crack open. His hand reached for the whip, old habit, old identity, the knife he had sharpened on other people's pain. His finger stopped an inch from the handle. Around him, the yard breathed differently, guards and prisoners and drones all watching a man choose who he wanted to be. Lysa stepped beside him, not behind, beside. "Sir, permission to speak freely." Varun's voice came out rough. "Granted. We have a choice. We enforce the system that broke us, or we remember what made us human." She looked at Miguel, at Jal still calling names, at Rux kneeling in apology. "I choose warm. I choose care. I choose cookies over cruelty." A veteran guard moved forward, gray-scarred, decades of service, decades of violence. He removed his helmet. "My daughter used to bake." His voice cracked. "Before the war, before I forgot." He set the helmet on the ground. "I do not want to forget anymore." Another guard stepped forward, then another. Helmets on the ground. Weapons lowered. Silent testimony. The Directorate's voice crackled through the emergency channel. "Warden Threx, shut down this disruption immediately. Apply maximum force. Restore order." Varun looked at the speaker, at Miguel, at the pile of shock whips and helmets growing at the yard center. He reached for his belt, unclipped his whip, held it for a long moment, then threw it onto the pile. No. Static. Confusion. "Repeat your last?" "I said no. You want force? Come apply it yourself. I am done breaking people who remember how to be human." He turned to the guards. "New orders. Close the armory. Open medical bay. Feed the prisoners. Real food. Hot food. Human food." His voice grew stronger. "And someone bring me an apron. I have forgotten how to bake. I need to relearn." The Directorate channel went dead. Trying to process, trying to respond. Too late. Tess's broadcast was everywhere. Every facility in the Vela system, every administrative screen, every private terminal. The footage of guards laying down weapons, of a warden choosing warmth, of prisoners holding cookies like communion. You could not unsee it, could not unsmell it, could not unfeel it. Miguel stepped forward, placed his hand on Varun's shoulder. "It is okay to not know how. That is what teaching is for." Varun turned, face wet, eyes broken open. "Why? After everything?" "Because my grandmother told me something." Miguel smiled. "Nobody unlearns all at once. We relearn in bites." Jal approached, his calcified features gentle. "The ceremony is not finished. We still have names to call." He resumed the litany. Each name, each cookie held high, each promise of protection. Guards joined, prisoners joined. The whole yard became congregation. When the last name was called, silence fell. Then someone started singing. Not a hymn, not an anthem, just a song about home, about warmth, about things that mattered. Others joined, Othran and Human and Kaver, voices blending. In the observation tower, Tess watched her broadcast numbers climb. 3 facilities, 8, 20, the transmission replicating through secure channels, carried by sympathetic personnel, by people who remembered what cookies smelled like. She typed one message. Section 42, Meal Rights, Universal. Then she armed the dead man switch. If they tried to shut her down, the footage would scatter to every public network in the sector. They could silence her. They could not silence this. In the yard, Rux stood, walked to Miguel, extended his hand. "I do not deserve forgiveness, but I want to earn it." Teach me how to bake. Let me feed someone other than myself. Miguel took his hand. Baking is just remembering that ingredients become greater together. You already know that. You just forgot. The prisoners began organizing themselves. Kitchen detail, medical support, maintenance teams. Not ordered. Just moving naturally toward care. Lisa pulled Miguel aside. They will come. The directorate. They will try to take this back. I know. We might not win. We already won. They watched us remember. You cannot unremember that. He gestured to the yard. This is the hard part, keeping it alive, making it grow, turning one warm moment into every moment. How? The same way we started, one person at a time, one cookie at a time, one choice at a time. Warden approached, carrying the whip he had thrown away. For a moment, Miguel tensed. Then Warden spoke. There is a workshop. They use these to punish. I think we should repurpose them. Melt the coils. Shape them into something useful. He held Miguel's gaze. I want to make spoons. Wooden spoons. One for every person here. So we remember what we chose. Miguel felt tears come. That is perfect. Will you help me? I do not know where to start. Yes, but first let me teach you to mix dough. The rest comes after. As the sun set on Kaltor 7, the central yard transformed. Helmets and weapons piled in the center, monument to what was abandoned. Around them, people moved with purpose and gentleness, learning to be human again. The broadcast continued, spreading like warmth through cold space. Other facilities watching. Other prisoners seeing. Other guards remembering. In 3 weeks, 7 more facilities would lay down their weapons. In 6 months, the Directorate and Valley Pact would sign the Kaltor Accord. Kitchen rights, meal ceremonies, dignity through food. In 1 year, Voran Threx would testify before the Confederacy about warmth as resistance, about how cookies saved his soul, but that was all later. Right now, in this moment, a baker taught a warden to knead dough. A guard chose compassion over cruelty. A traitor learned that redemption tasted like shared cookies. And somewhere in the cold dark of space, other prisons smelled something impossible. Hope, baked fresh, rising. 6 months later. The bakery in Kaltor 7 ran 3 shifts, morning, afternoon, night, always warm, always full. Always teaching someone how to measure love in cups and tablespoons. Miguel stood at the main table, hands dusted with flour, showing a young Othran girl how to fold dough. She was 7. Her father was in medical recovery. She wanted to make him something that tasted like home. Gentle, Miguel said, you are not fighting it. You are teaching it to become. The girl pressed too hard. The dough tore. It is okay. We start again. That is what dough teaches us. You get another chance. Across the room, Voran scraped a baking sheet. 6 months of practice, and he still cleaned with the intensity of a man trying to scrub away old sins. His hands, once trained to hurt, now trained to nurture. Lisa entered, still in uniform but softer somehow. She had been appointed to the new facility council. Kitchen rights, medical oversight, conflict resolution, democracy baked into structure. Miguel, you have a visitor. A woman entered. Professional clothes. Diplomatic insignia. She carried a tablet and something wrapped in cloth. Miguel Arantes, my name is Kessa Thorne. I represent the Confederacy's Prison Reform Commission. She set the tablet on the counter. Your broadcast reached 43 facilities. 21 have enacted kitchen programs. 7 completely restructured their punishment systems. The Valley Pact and the Confederacy signed the Kaltor Accord last week. Meal rights are now protected. Cooking is officially recognized as cultural expression, not sedition. Miguel wiped his hands. That is good. Good? She laughed. It is historic. You started a revolution with cookies. I started a bakery. The revolution was just people remembering they were allowed to be warm. Kessa unwrapped the cloth. Inside, a wooden spoon. Simple. Beautiful. carved from recycled shock whip coils. This arrived at headquarters yesterday. No note, but it had this engraved on the handle. Miguel took it, read the inscription. "Do not panic. We baked the line, below it, smaller, from Caltor 7, where the whip learned to be a spoon." His throat tightened. Warden made this. 50 of them, one for each council facility. A gift, a reminder. Kessa smiled. The directorate is furious. They lost 20% of their labor control because people want to eat warm food. They are threatening sanctions. Let them threaten. They cannot unsmell cookies. No, they cannot. She moved to leave, then stopped. The commission wants to know. Would you be willing to travel, teach other facilities, help implement kitchen programs? Miguel looked at the bakery, at Vorun, scraping with devotion, at the Othran girl trying again with her dough, at Rux now running the ingredient distribution, making sure the weakest ate first. Not yet. This place still needs me. These people are still learning. When they do not need me anymore, ask again. I will. Kessa left the spoon. Keep changing the galaxy, one batch at a time. After she left, Lysa approached. You could go, you know. You have earned rest. Rest is not what I need. Purpose is. He touched the spoon. Besides, someone has to make sure Varun does not overmix the dough. He still bakes like he is punishing flour. Varun looked up. I heard that. Good. You were meant to. They smiled at each other, warden and prisoner, enemy and friend, two men learning to be human together. That evening, after the last shift, Miguel stood in the empty bakery and breathed in the smell. Flour, warmth, memory. This was what his grandmother meant. Fire and sugar as resistance, care as revolution. A terminal blinked. Message from Tess, now running the communications network from a proper office instead of a maintenance bay. Transmission incoming, broadcasting from Uthros Feeks. Thought you should see. The screen showed a memorial, new, stone. At its base, cookies, hundreds of them, offerings. The plaque read, in memory of all who baked when baking was illegal. May we never forget that warmth is resistance. Below that, a list of names. Varun's mother was third from the top. Miguel downloaded the image, printed it, added it to the bakery wall, where they kept pictures of everyone who had been part of the beginning. The door opened. Lisa, off-duty, hair down, looking human instead of official. The night shift requested a favor. They want a batch to take to medical, some of the long-term patients. Of course, help me mix. They worked in comfortable silence, measuring, mixing, shaping small circles of care. Lisa had gotten good at it. Her hands moved with confidence now. I wrote to my sister's partner today, she said quietly. Told them what happened here, how someone reminded me that gentleness was possible. They wrote back. Said she would have been proud. Her hands paused. Thank you for that. I did not do it alone. No, but you did it first. That matters. They loaded the cookies into the oven, the new one, purpose-built, donated by the Reform Commission. It even had a nameplate, Stella Core 2. 0, in honor of the first. While they baked, Miguel taught Lisa a song his grandmother used to sing, about stars that forgot they used to be dust, about how everything warm came from something broken learning to burn again. Outside, Caltor 7 turned in the dark. From space, it looked different now. Lights where there used to be shadows. A thermal signature from the bakery, visible in infrared, broadcasting warmth into the void. A lighthouse. A promise. A reminder that humanity had never been about strength or conquest or dominance. It had always been about this. Choosing to care when caring was illegal. Choosing to warm when cold was easier. Choosing to bake when baking meant rebellion. The cookies finished. Golden, perfect, impossible. Miguel and Lisa loaded them into containers marked for medical delivery. Then Miguel wrote something on the manifest. "What does it say?" Lysa asked. He showed her. "Tomorrow again." Lysa smiled. "Tomorrow again." They walked the cookies to medical together, and behind them the bakery stayed lit. Always warm, always ready, always teaching someone new that flour and fire and stubbornness could change the galaxy. One cookie at a time, one warm moment at a time, one choice at a time. And somewhere in the administrative towers of the Directorate, officials watched the statistics and realized they had already lost. You could not regulate warmth, could not legislate care, could not punish kindness into submission. The prisoners had learned to bake, and once you remembered how to be warm, you could never quite forget again. Humanity, rising, spreading, one impossible cookie at a time. Fuck yeah. In the end, maybe the universe doesn't need another hero. Maybe it just needs people who remember how to be warm when everything tells them to be cold. Miguel didn't save the galaxy with weapons or words. He did it with cookies, with proof that care itself is a kind of rebellion. Because the moment you choose empathy over obedience, the system already starts to crumble. So, what happens to a world when compassion becomes contagious? What would you risk just to make someone else feel seen, fed, or safe? And how many revolutions have quietly started in kitchens, workshops, and hearts that refuse to shut down? If you felt this story rise inside you like fresh dough, write warmth in the comments, so I'll know you stayed until the very last crumb. Tell me your city, because warmth deserves coordinates. Subscribe, like, hype this rebellion of kindness, share it, so someone out there remembers that care is not weakness. And don't miss the next story. It's already baking in the stars, waiting for you on the final card.